Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, May 28th, 2020. My name is Tyler Biddle, and I have the honor to serve as the College Registrar with Admissions and Records here at ASU-Beebe. Welcome to our third virtual summer series entitled First Year Information, or FYI Sessions. Throughout this summer, each Thursday at 7 p.m., we are hosting live FYI sessions where prospective and newly admitted students have the opportunity to engage with our campus professionals about scholarships, financial aid, academic advising, and student life. Over the next 30 minutes, we will engage with Sarah Burrows, our financial aid specialist from the Heber Springs campus, in a moderated conversation and presentation about financial aid and the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. We will follow that with an opportunity for you to ask questions directly to Sarah in the chat box. Mr. Zach Tucker, our Director of Student Life, will be moderating the chat and also helping provide links to some of the resources we've shared in the presentation. If needed, we can organize a follow-up session with you for an extended question and answer session on personal or specific matters. So with that, Sarah, I'd like to turn it over to you. I believe you have a presentation for us about the FAFSA and what students need to know when they're beginning to fill out the FAFSA.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Sarah Burrows, and I'll be walking you through some information about the FAFSA and how to fill out the FAFSA and just some general information about financial aid. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. And what it does is it collects demographic and financial information from the students and the students' parents if they're a dependent student. That information is used to calculate the expected family contribution, which is used to determine how much aid a student is eligible for. The FAFSA is available in both English and Spanish, so students can fill it out in whatever language they're most comfortable in. This graphic shows how the EFC is calculated and determined for students. It's the measurement of the students' and families' ability to pay for post-secondary educational experiences and expenses. So that basically just means that it shows how much the students and families have to put towards college, okay, based on their income and other factors such as investments, savings, and checking accounts. So the best time to fill out the FAFSA is as soon as it opens up, okay? And it opens up October 1st of the year prior to the school year. So this school year, it opened up October 1st, 2018, but it can be filled out at any point during the academic year. It must be filled out annually. So once you fill out this year's FAFSA, so for the 2020-2021 school year, again, for the 2020-21 and the 2022 school year, you'll need to complete another FAFSA. Different colleges set different priority dates. Ours is June 1st. That's just the date that we recommend students having their aid done by so that we can ensure that they're worked by the time school starts. There are a couple different ways that students can complete the FAFSA. The most common way is FAFSA on the web, which is just the online portal for students to go to access the application. There's also a new app called My Student Aid mobile app, and I think the link will be provided. So you can go and download that as well and have access to the application. You can also fill it out on the phone or on paper, and there are representatives that can help you online as well. So the first thing a student will need to do when filling out the FAFSA, if you do it online, which again is pretty much the most popular way to do it, is to create a FAFSA ID. So you're just creating an account, and so you'll have your username and password to be able to log into your portal each year to submit a new FAFSA, also to make corrections and to view your processed aid, your processed FAFSAs. If you're a dependent student and so you need some of your parents' financial information, then they will need to create a FAFSA or an FSA ID as well. So this is what the page looks like for the FAFSA on the web. It is studentaid.ed.gov, and I believe that link will be provided below as well. If you are a returning student and you filled this out in the past, you would click login and enter that information that you created with the FSA ID. If not, then you would click start here. As a student, you would click the link I'm the student, and then you would click next. The parent can fill out the FAFSA for the student. There's an option for that as well. The FOTF worksheet provides information. It's just a preview of questions that will be asked on the FAFSA. So if students are curious about that and want to get some information about that before they start filling their FAFSA out, you absolutely have access to this, and the link will be provided below to that as well.
So Sarah, could families almost fill this worksheet out before they even begin the FAFSA so that they can make sure they have everything they need?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a really great resource just to make sure you've collected all the correct information so you can sit down and have it all there and ready for you when you begin the application. I feel like it's important to note that the application can be saved while you are completing it. So, if you do start filling it out and realize that you don't have all the information, you can have the option to save it and exit and then gather that information and come back in if you need to. So some general information that they're going to ask you on the FAFSA is your social security number, your citizen status, your marital status, if you've had any drug convictions of possession or sale. If you are selected for the selective service, this question is more for males over the age of 18 and under the age of 25, I believe. And then the highest education level completed by the father and mother. The FAFSA also will ask you questions about your dependency status. So this is just to determine if you will need information regarding your parents. So some of the questions they'll ask you is if you're under the age of 24, if you're married, if you have any children, if you are serving or currently serve in the armed forces, and questions like that. So if you answer no to all the questions, then you are dependent and you will need your parents' information, your parent or parents' information. If you answer yes to any of the questions, then you are independent and you won't need that parent. Some financial information that the FAFSA will ask you, both you and your parents if you are a dependent student, is your tax, your income, and other financial information. So your adjusted gross income, your wages and salaries and tips for that year. If you're a dislocated worker, if you've received any federal benefits from any colleges in the last 2 years. I'll ask you about your assets, so how much money in your savings and checking accounts, if you have any investments, and it will also ask you about your untaxed income as well. So for the 2020-2021 FAFSA, it will be using your 2018 tax returns and tax information. So it uses prior year, so 2 years before the current academic school year. The IRS Data Retrieval Tool, or the DRT, is a great resource for students and parents both who are providing their financial information on the FAFSA. So it allows for certain tax information to be transferred directly from the IRS database onto the FAFSA. So while it is voluntary and students can choose whether or not to transfer the data, it's a really great resource because it reduces errors on the FAFSA. It reduces the amount of documents that we may need to request from you if we need to from the financial aid office. And it cuts down a little bit of time while filling out the FAFSA as well, which is always a plus. So a lot of students and parents both can use the data retrieval tool, but there are a few instances in where they can't. So most of the time, it's whenever there's conflicting information. So if you are currently married, but you didn't file as married in 2018, maybe you recently got married. If you are currently divorced, but you filed as married filing joint in 2018, or if you don't have a valid social security number, you or your parents. So those are just some common reasons why. Some additional information that the FAFSA will ask you is college information. So when students look up colleges to add on their FAFSA that they would like their FAFSA to be sent to, they can search it by the school's state or name. So you can look at all those schools in Arkansas maybe, or you can look at, Arkansas State University and see if you can find us that way. Or if you know specifically which school you're wanting to send it to, you can use the school's federal student code. It will also ask you on that same page about housing plans. So if you plan on living with your parent while you're attending college, if you're planning on living off campus, or if you're planning on living on campus in student housing. At the end, it will also ask you about FAFSA preparer information, but this is not very common. Our federal student code, for those of you who still have yet to fill out the FAFSA or are needing to fill it out for future years, is 001091. And like I said, you can just key this in directly and find our school. It'll be the only one that pops up. Just click the checkbox and then click next. Cuts down a couple steps in the extra searching. This is the federal school code for all the ASU-Beebe campuses. So for the Beebe, Searcy, Heber Springs, and Little Rock Air Force Base campuses. It's the same code for all 4 of them. At the end of the document, you will be required to sign the FAFSA. If you're a dependent student, then you'll need to sign, and then one of your parents will need to sign. There are a couple different ways that you can sign. So the easiest way is to use your electronic signature, but there are also other solutions for students. So you can have a signature page that you print out, and then you can either send that in to the Department of Education, or you can submit it to your financial aid office and they can put that on file for you, or you can sign it using the paper FAFSA that we talked about earlier. So these are some frequent errors that students make on their FAFSA. Social Security numbers, it's really important that you double check and triple check those Social Security numbers, just because that's how they identify you. And they also, and another common error is just the divorced, widowed, remarried, the marital status information for parents. Just need to make sure that that's accurate, and the marital dates are also accurate. The income earned by the parent and step parent. So this information is really easy to transfer and to make sure that it's accurate if you do use that data retrieval tool. So it kind of cuts down on that error too. Untaxed income, students often are confused by what types of untaxed income there are. And they actually have links on the FAFSA when you're filling this out. You can kind of click on them and it'll kind of go through the different types of untaxed income there are, which is helpful. The U.S. income tax is paid. That's a confusing question, and the FAFSA does give you instructions about how to calculate that and make sure that you have that accurate information. The household size is confusing. Students are often confused because maybe students are considered dependent, but they aren't living with the student or the student's parents, or maybe they have people who are living with in their household currently, but aren't necessarily included in the taxable household. Just different things like that are a little bit confusing. The number of household members in college. So they need to be admitted into college and for sure going in order to include them on the FAFSA. And if you have a sibling that's maybe trying to decide if they will or if they aren't, you can always go back in and make a correction and add them to that household size as well once they decide for sure. And we'll talk about how to make corrections a little later in the slide. Also, if you are a student and you are filling out the FAFSA and your parent is in college, you won't include your parent in the numbers of members in college in the household. If you are the parent and you have children in college, then you will include them in that number. So that's a little bit confusing to students as well. And then real estate and investment net worth. So a lot of students get confused by that question because you won't include your house. Real estate investments are if you have any rental properties or anything like that, any stocks or investments of that type. It won't include your house or your car or anything like that. So as far as the FAFSA processing results, once you have submitted your FAFSA and it's been processed, you will receive a student aid report, or a SAR, and this will just give you a summary of your information. It will provide you with your ESC, so you'll be able to see that number, and we mentioned that a little earlier in the PowerPoint. And we will receive your institution student information record, or your ISER, and that's what we'll be evaluating your eligibility with, and we'll receive your information that way. So to make corrections on your FAFSA, if you need to, then you can just use the FAFSA on the web. It's really easy if you do that, or on the mobile app as well. You can go in and log in with your FSA ID. You can click on the academic year, which you submitted a FAFSA for, and then you would click Make Corrections. And you can add schools this way. If you have any schools that you wanted to add on there, like I said, you can adjust household size. Any corrections that need to be made, you can make using that. You can also update information on the paper SAR if you receive it, or fill out a paper FAFSA, and you can also submit documents to your financial aid office, and we can help you make corrections as well. So verification, so some students are selected for verification on their FAFSA by the Department of Education, and this is just to ensure that the information provided on the FAFSA is accurate, just to make sure everything checks out. Sometimes this is random. The Department of Ed picks them out randomly, and sometimes it's because there's maybe conflicting information on there that needs to be checked out, things like that. Students will need to submit, if they are selected for verification, they'll need to submit verification forms and then any supporting documents that the financial aid office might need, just depending on the type of verification. It's not a big deal. It's really easy to resolve. All we need are some forms from you, and we'll be happy to help you out with getting them. We actually have partnered with Pro Verifier, or Pro Ed, this semester, and we're really excited about that. So if you are selected for verification, you will receive an email from Pro Ed that's just prompting you to log in to access your file. And so you'll need to confirm your identity, create a password, and then you'll be able to access your documents and begin the verification process. This is a really great opportunity for students, and because it allows you to fill out all of the things online and upload them directly to that portal. And then you'll also be able to sign documents electronically, so you won't have to worry about printing any documents out and then uploading them or anything like that. You can just click on it and sign it and have it all done in one quick and easy step.
So students should really pay attention for that email from Pro Ed and from ASU-Beebe so they can get in and get that process taken care of?
Yes, for sure, because we won't be able to work your aid until your FAFSA has been verified. So just make sure to keep monitoring your ASU-Beebe email for any emails from the financial aid office or from ProVerify, so that we can get in and make sure that all your stuff looks good and get your aid work for the school year. So students can also submit special circumstances forms. So these are to notate and address issues that may not be able to be documented on the FAFSA. So we just need a written explanation and documentation from you, so that we can just understand the situation and kind of what's going on. And then we will review that and we'll request additional information if necessary. The decisions are final, but we will work with you just to make sure we understand the lengths of the situation, what's really going on. So a couple different examples, maybe there was a parent or spouse death recently, so maybe they received income that you did need to record on your FAFSA from 2018, but no income is currently coming in from them now. Maybe there's loss of employment, should be the same situation. A divorce, if you were divorced and you had claimed your spouse's income on your 2018 tax return, but you don't currently claim them on your current tax return, there's only one income in the household, you can submit a special circumstances form. If there are any medical expenses that have really been a burden on your family and are cutting down on how much money you have to you put towards an education or college. So those are just some of the circumstances, and you can feel free to contact us if you think that you have a circumstance that would need one of these documentations or this process, and we can help you out with that for sure.
Sarah, is the financial aid office going to be considering any special circumstances related to COVID-19 this spring semester?
Yes, we are for sure. We do understand that this situation with the coronavirus or COVID-19 could have put some financial stress on families or students this school year or this current year. And so typically we look at past years when we're considering special circumstances, but since this has been such a recent crisis, we have updated our special circumstance forms to include anything that might have happened due to COVID-19 or the coronavirus. So students who can get financial aid, it looks like there are a whole lot of requirements that is really not that bad. So you just have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. You have to have have to be a high school graduate, either from a public high school or homeschooled or private, or you have to have your GED. You need to be enrolled in an eligible degree program. So you just pretty much need to be degree seeking, either an associate's degree or a technical certificate. You're enrolled at ASU-Beebe. You need to have a valid social security number. And then all males over the age of 18 need to be registered with a selective service. And then, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but while you're filling out the FAFSA, if you aren't 18 yet, maybe say you're 17, you're still a senior in high school, and you're wanting to get this done a little early and you're filling it out, you can check a box that will send your information to the selective service, so you can make sure that you get registered, and that won't hold you back from receiving any financial aid. I really like that feature part of the FAFSA. And you also have to be making satisfactory academic progress while attending your college. So this is more for continuing students rather than beginning students, but still really important. So for us personally at ASU-Beebe, that's just a 2.0 GPA, a 67% completion rate, or you have to complete your program in 150% of the time. So if you're in a 60 credit hour program, you just have to complete it within 90 credit hours. So the FAFSA is an application, and through that you have access and have applied to these different programs. So the federal Pell Grant is the most common one that people see and receive. Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, so the SEOG grant, is another common one, and this is for students with really low EFCs, expected family contributions, who might need a little extra funds. Federal work studies are a really great opportunity that students can be a part of, and there's a question on the FAFSA that asks if you want to be considered for a federal work study position, and we have a lot of them on our campus, and so just front desk workers answering phones, or we might have some tutor positions open or anything like that, and then you can get paid to work for the institution, make a little bit extra money. So while there is a question on it on the FAFSA, you will still need to go to our website and apply for those positions, and you can find that website at jobs@asub.edu. if you scroll down to the bottom, I believe that's where you can find that. Federal loans are another thing that are handed out pretty often, another form of aid. And so there's subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans that we award. And then plus loans are parent loans. And so your parents can actually take out loans as well to help pay for your college. So many Arkansas financial aid programs require you to have a FAFSA on file in order for you to be eligible for them. So it's really important, not just for federal financial aid, but also for Arkansas financial aid as well. So the Arkansas Challenge Scholarship is a really popular one. I think y'all had touched on this a little bit earlier as well. The students, and just it goes with you and builds with you as you go throughout your school year if you meet all the qualifications. And then the Arkansas Future Grant is also another really good one. It's a gap scholarship, so it's good for students who are in any STEM programs or high demand areas in Arkansas, and it just provides funds to cover tuition fees that other aid doesn't account for.
And here at ASU-Beebe, we have quite a few programs that are on the AR Future list.
Yes, we do. You can actually go to the ADHE website, so the Arkansas Department of Higher Education, and you can see the list of programs that ASU-Beebe offers that the Arkansas Workforce Scholarship does. Yeah, the Arkansas Future Grant, that the Arkansas Future Grant does cover. So it gives a list of all the colleges in Arkansas and all the programs that it does provide funds for at those colleges. Did we have any questions about anything?
Yeah. Mr. Tucker, are there any questions out in Facebook land?
There are not any questions posted in the chat right now, but I do have a question. We talked about financial aid, and we talked, or you mentioned briefly about loan opportunities. Could you explain the difference between Pell and subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans for our students?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So grants and scholarships are the types of federal or financial aid that you don't have to pay back, okay? So that's your money to you. If there's any left over after tuition or fees from the Pell Grant, then it will be refunded to you, and you can use that for any living expenses that you might have, or books or supplies or different needs you might have. And then loans, they do have to be paid back. So they've given you the money now and they're expecting it back later. So for federal loans, you have 6 months after you're no longer in college anymore to pay them back. And subsidized loans won't accrue interest until after you are out of college. So if you take out $3,500 at the end of your time in college, then you will only owe $3,500, okay? If you take out unsubsidized loans, they do accrue interest, and you can find the annual interest rates and what they are, the updated ones, on the website on the federal Department of Education on their website. And so if you took out $3,500, that amount would be larger by the time you got out of school, because it would be accruing interest or adding money on that throughout your time in college. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
And we also have Ms. Bonnie Burgoyne with us now too, our Director of Financial Aid. And so that kind of keeping in the vein of the questions of loans, how would students know how much they would need to borrow with loans? And is the amount they could borrow determined by their FAFSA?
Hello, everybody. Basically, the amount that a student can borrow up to is based on their grade level and also their financial need. So, and I know Sarah discussed financial need just a few minutes ago. So for a dependent student, a first-year student can borrow up to $3,500, and for a subsidized loan, and unsubsidized would be $2,000. For a dependent second-year student, a student can borrow $4,500 in subsidized and $2,000 in unsubsidized. And then we have our independent students. Their first year, they can borrow $3,500 on subsidized and $6,000 on unsubsidized. And then for second year independent students, that would be $4,500 subsidized and $6,000 unsubsidized. So when you're trying to figure out what you need to borrow, you need to determine your expenses for school, like your tuition, your fees, your books, transportation costs, living arrangements, if you're living in the dorm or living on your own, any supplies you may need for school. And then determine, you can look and see how much financial aid you've received, such as the Pell Grant or maybe a federal SEOG grant, or an institutional scholarship or Arkansas funding. And then you can see how much you're getting there. So you add up your total expenses, you figure out what you're receiving in aid, and then you subtract that, and then it will give you a bottom line, and that will give you an idea as to how much you need to borrow. And one thing that I like to tell students is that you're probably too young to know about the Rolling Stones song about get what you need. So when I look at student loans and I think about the amount to request what you need, not what you want. So it's always, yeah. So that's what I would highly recommend that you do, because the amount that you borrow, as Sarah said, it will have to be repaid at some point.
Thank you, Bonnie. We have a question from Facebook in the chat. It's from Ashley, and the question is, can you use Pell Grants to pay for what the GI Bill does not pay for?
Yes. Yes. The only thing that financial aid is not designed for is to purchase cars, stereo equipment, those kinds of things. It is basically used for living expenses and school expenses. And it will also, of course, help with whatever based on the amount of aid you can receive, it could cover your tuition fees and assist with books. Good question.
Awesome. Another question is about textbooks. You mentioned the things that you can use financial aid for. So when can students charge textbooks purchased in the college bookstore to their financial aid?
Okay. Usually it's 1 week prior to the start of the semester. That's when students can start charging their books. And that's and you made a really good statement about managing the campus bookstore. Students can only use their funds at ASU-Beebe bookstore in Searcy or Heber Springs. It does not work for Textbook Corner.
Awesome. I think, I don't know if you broke up a little bit. I think you did on my end. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that your financial aid can only be used to purchase textbooks on the ASU-Beebe campus bookstore, either at the Beebe, Heber Springs, or Searcy campuses, not off-site private book companies like Amazon online or any other brick and mortar off of our campus. That was a great point. Great point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So since we spent so much time talking about the FAFSA and getting everything that's needed to complete the FAFSA, how could students know the status of their FAFSA application?
Okay. Usually students will know the status by going to their Vanguard portal. That's where students can really look up just about anything about their schedule, their financial aid, their student account. All of that information is there in the Vanguard portal. So to look at financial aid, you'll go in to the Vanguard portal, and on the left-hand side, you're going to see some options. And one of those options is My Financial Aid. So you would click on that, and then there's several options there that you can select so that you can look at your financial aid award. And another thing I want to mention is that financial aid method of communication to students is primarily through email. So please get your student account set up for email, because sometimes we would email scholarship information for a particular student, maybe a group of students in a particular program. Maybe if we have a question, or we want to confirm something with you, or just to let you know about something about your financial aid, we always communicate through that campus email. It's real important.
It's a really great point, Ms. Bonnie.
Thanks, Sarah.
I think one question that gets asked a lot that we hear in my office over here is how can parents of students talk about a student's financial aid or FAFSA information with the financial aid office?
Okay.
And usually that is actually a form that's not in the financial aid office, but in the registrar's office, called an access to records. So if you are a student and you have a parent or a guardian or another individual that you would like to be able to speak with the financial aid office or with the financial aid office about your aid, you'd actually complete that access to records form where you would give written permission for this other individual to have access to that information.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
And then right now with current remote working situation, normally students would have to physically come to campus to present that form and ID to my office, but right now students can submit that form via their ASU-Beebe student email, along with a picture of their photo ID. It just needs to come from their official ASU-Beebe email.
I think one last question, unless there's another one in the chat. A couple of weeks ago when we talked about scholarships in an FYI session, Tyler talked about scholarship stacking and kind of the limits that you can get in scholarships. I know when some students think of financial aid, they think about a really fat refund check that they might get a little bit into the semester. Could you talk about what's the scenario that a student might get a refund check, and is there a cap on how much of a refund or how much aid a student might qualify for?
Okay. Well, it's just going to depend on each individual student. Each student is different. Their financial information is different. Their family information is different. So it's very individualized financial aid awarding because everyone's different, right? So the amount that a student would receive in a refund is also going to be different because students aren't always enrolled in the same courses and they have different expenses. So what happens with a refund and how to get a refund is when all of your financial aid is applied to your account, and you have what's called a negative balance, or you'll see on your student portal enrolled in this. You'll see that you may have a minus $300, or you'll see $300 in brackets. That means that you have a credit on your account and that you would be receiving that in either a direct deposit or you'll receive it in a check mailed to the address that we have on file for you. And if you want to receive your payment through direct deposit, you would go to your Vanguard portal. As soon as you log in, you're going to see some tiles there. So click on the tile that says NailNet, and that's where you can put in your bank account information. And then that's how you would receive your stipend or refund check.
Well, I believe if we haven't got any other questions in the chat, that's the end of our FYI session this afternoon.
Okay.
So Sarah, Ms. Bonnie, thank you both for the wonderful information you're able to give for our students. Zach, thank you for being our host and king of technology this evening so that we can connect with our students. Thank you, everyone. This video will be posted to the new students FYI information page, along with all links that we've been putting in the chat for resources for students to have access to.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.